Welcome back to the Imaginary Gallery. It's TJ, your host. We are still traveling within the mind of the abuser, still referencing Lundy Bancroft's book, Why Does He Do That? Inside the Minds of Angry and Controlling Men. We are now at a section which involves the abusive person in everyday life, and it's entitled 10 Reasons to Stay the Same, or, in other words, 10 Reasons Not to Change. Mr. Bancroft starts off by stating, to answer the question, which is the book title, Why Does He Do That? We have to examine the foundation on which abusive behaviors are based. The first level would be the abusive person's attitudes, habits, and beliefs, the thinking that drives this behavior daily, which we've been looking at already. On the second level would be the learning process by which some boys, which for this one I'll stick with the male, but it could be female, just keep that in mind. Some boys develop into abusive men, or in other words, where abusive values originate. But Bancroft tells us there's also a third level, rarely mentioned in any kind of discussions about abuse, which he claims is actually one of the most important dynamics, which involves the benefits the abusive person gets that make this type of abusive behavior desirable to him. In what ways can abusiveness be possibly rewarding? How does this destructive pattern ever get reinforced? Then he takes us into a scenario, and he tells us to consider this, which I'm rewriting as I go. Mommy, Daddy, and the two kids, brother and sister, are having their dinner on a Monday night. The daddy is acting irritable, criticizing people for every little thing during the meal. Get your elbows off the table. And he's spreading tension around the table like some kind of sickening electricity. When he finishes eating his food, he jumps up from the table quickly and heads out of the room, and then the 10-year-old daughter says,
Daddy, where are you going? It's your night to do dishes.
Upon hearing these words, Daddy bursts into flames and screams at the top of his lungs,
You little blank!
insert profanity here.
Don't you dare try to tell me what to do. I'll put that dish on your face.
Then he grabs a plate off the table and he pretends like he's gonna throw it at her and instead smashes it against the wall. Then he kicks a chair over and then stomps off out of the room. Now the mother and the children are trembling. They're terrified. And then Daddy reappears in the doorway and screams,
You better shut your mouth.
So then the daughter chokes on her own tears, and it causes her to tremble even more violently. Now, without touching anybody, Daddy has sent a painful shockwave of terrorism through the entire family. The following Monday, dinner is just fine, normal, without any tension like the last week. Once again, Daddy starts to stroll out of the kitchen when it finishes eating. Does anybody say, Hey, Daddy, it's your turn to do... No. Why? Well, because of that disruption. And in fact, Bancroft tells us it will be several months before anybody ever makes that mistake again. So they quietly attend to cleaning up the dishes, or they argue among themselves of who should be doing it, taking out the frustrations over the daddy's unfairness and volatility onto each other. That terrifying behavior has created a new context in which he will not have to do those dishes anytime soon, and no one will dare ask him to do it. Any incident of abusive behavior brings the abusive person benefits just as this one did. Over time, the abusive person grows attached to its ballooning collections of comforts and privileges. We're going to go into our list of the 10 reasons to stay the same. Reason number 1, the intrinsic satisfaction of having power and control. The abusive person gains a lot of power through the coercive and intimidating behaviors such as the one we just witnessed. And this sensation can create a narcissistic supply-type rush. Thrilling. The person who wields power feels important and effective and finds a momentary relief from life's normal stresses. It isn't the lady's pain that appeals to him. Most abusive people are not sadists. In fact, he's got to go to some lengths to shield himself from his own natural tendency to empathize with her. The feeling that he rules is where the pleasure exists. Yet the heady rush of power is the bare beginning of what the abusive person gains through its mistreatment of the partner. If the reward stopped there, Bancroft says he would find it much easier than he does to prevail upon his clients to make the change. Number 2, getting its way, especially when it matters to it the most. A romantic partnership involves a never-ending series of negotiations amongst two different people and their needs, preferences, and desires. Many of these differences have to be worked out and are matters of tremendous importance to the emotional life of each person involved. Examples would be,
are we going to spend Thanksgiving this year with my relatives, of which I enjoy, or with your relatives, of which I can't stand?
Are we eating dinner tonight at my favorite restaurant? Or at some nasty place you want to go to that I'm sick of, where the children end up getting wound up and irritating?
Am I going to have to go to my office party alone this year, which you know makes me feel horrible? Or are you going to join me, even though you'd rather spend that evening doing anything else but joining me there?
It's important not to underestimate the impact of these kinds of day-to-day decisions. Your happiness in your relationship depends greatly on your ability to get your needs met and to be heard and taken seriously. If these decisions are taken over by some kind of abusive creature or controlling monster, you will have disappointments repeatedly, over and over. You'll have to constantly sacrifice your own needs for this creature. Now, he, or it, on the other hand, enjoys the luxury of this relationship where it rarely has to compromise. It gets to do all the things that it wants to do and skips all the rest. It shows off generosity when the stakes are low so that others and friends will see what a swell guy he is. The abusive person ends up with the benefits of being in an intimate relationship without all the sacrifices that usually come with that kind of territory. That's a pretty privileged lifestyle. Number 3, somebody to take its problems out on. Have you ever suffered a tremendous disappointment or a painful loss and desperately looking for somebody to blame? For example, have you ever been nasty and rude to a store clerk when you were furious about something that happened in your job? Most people have an impulse to dump their negative feelings on some undeserving person as a way to temporarily relieve any kind of discomfort, frustration, or sadness. Certain days you may know that you just have to keep an eye on yourself just to make sure you don't attack or chew somebody's head off. The abusive person doesn't bother to keep an eye on itself, however. In fact, it considers itself entitled to use the partner as a kind of human garbage dump or human urinal, Freeway Reese Witherspoon's line. But it can be a human urinal garbage dump where it can litter the ordinary pains and frustrations that life brings. The partner is always an available target, easy to blame, since no partner can be perfect, and she can't prevent him from dumping because if she tries, it'll get even worse. The creature's excuse when it jettisons its distresses onto her is that its life is unusually troubling and painful, which is an unacceptable rationalization, even if it's true, which normally it ain't. Number 4, free labor from the partner, leisure and freedom for him. No abusive man does his share of the work in a relationship. He may take advantage of the partner's hard work of keeping the house and preparing the food, caring for the kids, and managing the multiple details of life, or if he's one of the few abusive people who carries its weight in these areas, then it exploits her emotionally instead, sucking her emotions dry of attention, nurturing and support, and returning only a tiny little trickle. All this uncompensated labor from her means extra leisure time for him. During the hours that he spends talking about himself and his life, he's relieved of the work of having to listen to the ladies. The long weekend days when she cares for the kids are his opportunity to watch the football game, go out camping or rock climbing, or write his own novel. Bancroft's clients don't make the connection that someone else has to take care of the work. They think of it as just mysteriously getting done and refer to the ladies as the lazy ones. Yet on a deeper level, the abusive person seems to realize how hard the partner works because it fights like heck not to have to share that burden. He's accustomed to his luxury and often talks exaggeratedly about its exhaustion to excuse staying on its bottom. Studies have shown that a majority of ladies feel that their male partners don't contribute fairly to the household responsibilities. However, a lady whose partner is not abusive at least has the option to put a foot down about her workload and insist that he assist. With an abusive person, however, if you do that, it's either going to ignore you or make you pay. The abusive person comes and goes as it wishes, meets or ignores its responsibilities at its choice, skips anything it finds too unpleasant. In fact, some abusive people are rarely home at all. They only use their house as a base for periodic refueling. And number 5, which will be the last of this video, the other 5 will be in another one, being the center of attention with priority given to his needs. When a lady's partner chronically mistreats her, what do you think goes on in her mind? What encompasses all of her thoughts? Him, of course. She ponders how she could soothe him next time, make sure he doesn't throw a fit and scream, and how to improve herself, make herself look prettier, or whatever it might take in his eyes, how she might delicately bring up a touchy subject. We've covered that doesn't work. Little space remains for her to think about her own situation, her own life, and her own personal involvements. And this suits the abusive person just fine. Remember isolation? He wants her to be thinking about him. He gets cooperation and catering to all of his physical, sexual, and emotional needs. And if the couple has kids, the entire family strives to enhance his good moods and fix his bad ones, in hope that he won't start ripping things apart. Consistently at the center of attention and getting its own way, the abusive person can ensure that its emotional needs will be met on its terms, which is a luxury that he does not want to part with.
I am the narcopath.
Once I established that your bank account was gonna do for me and my purposes, thanks to some special snooping while you were drugged and asleep, I realized if we were gonna still go out together to that same watering hole, I had to do some damage control. So I would go on nights that you were busy, and I would be sure to tell every single one, which was about 95% of them, I'm dating someone now. If you see me in public, please look the other way. Don't let them know we know each other. I don't want to have to answer any embarrassing questions. And they all complied because they were all just as loose as I was.
I'm convinced. I was born to perform in the Shady Lady. Come, you'll find me there, nude.
Don't even get me started about the time we were looking through Craigslist for fun, just to see who we might recognize. Your idea, by the way. You came across an ad with my Virginia lips close up on the screen, and you looked at me with an evil expression. What is this? Why are you on there? And of course it was me, but I tried to convince you that, honey, that ain't my Virginia. It's not. See right there, that crevice right there? It's a little bit to the left, mine's to the right. It does look like my Virginia, but it isn't. Honey, you're the only one for me, I'd sell you. And you didn't believe me for the longest time. Ugh. I had to take that ad down and replace it with another one because I couldn't have this. This was detrimental to my career, which was to infiltrate your life. But, why did you have to be so nosy? Why did you even want to look in the first place? I looked at it when you weren't around trying to find you, and of course you weren't there. But I was, and it was tough. In the end, I convinced you it was somebody else's Virginia, plus it disappeared. I was home free.
I was quite famous at that place, if you must know.
My nickname was Patty Put Out. They all knew me as Patty Put Out.